to ask everybody to please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Is there any correspondence this evening?
Yes, I'd received some emails regarding bus building or student issues, and all were either addressed or directed to the appropriate administrator to address.
And are there any agenda modifications?
There are. We are removing item 4. We are still waiting on some changes to be made, so I would foresee that being on next month's agenda, and we have plenty of time because it's not till January. There are additions to 084, 085, and 088, and there is a new number 10.
And I also have the addition of a fund to number 7, item number 7, adding the water bottle refilling station grant that was received from the Ohio EPA so that that fund can be established. Has to be tracked under a separate fund. There was no guidance issued initially, but checked with the Auditor State's office, and so we're adding a fund there, 4999023, in the amount of $4,461.03. That's item number 7.
Can you repeat those?
It's the Ohio EPA water bottle refilling station grant.
And the fund number again?
499-9023.
And the amount?
$4,461.03.
Thank you. Okay, at this time we are going to have a presentation for our high school cross-country course.
So I would like to welcome up Ms. Long and Mr. Sheeman, who will be giving a presentation.
Okay, thank you. You know, every year during my coaching evaluation, they always ask me, like, what are my wishes, what are my dreams for our program? And one has always been to have a middle school program, which we got last year. We had 5 runners. This year, up to 13 runners. And probably the second thing on my list has always been to have our own home course. Long time ago, we ran at Hemlock Springs, then we ran at Deer Lake Golf Course. We once had a course at Geneva State Park. But to look at all the property we have here at the high school now, with Mr. Sheeman and some other people volunteering to do some stuff to have our own course right here on our property, would be just amazing. So I know we have a couple different maps that we've gone and walked to try to get 3.1 for the high school and 2 miles exactly for the middle school. So we pretty much have it figured out. I know once we get it approved, we'll have to adjust the start line in that. Like, we need it wide enough. If our hope is to be able to host some bigger meets like the all-county meet and things like that, we'll definitely need a wide start zone with a lot of boxes for different teams. So that might be a little bit different when we do the final map. So we're proposing that. I did talk to the city because we're trying to use all 3 parcels. The parcel where the school's actually on, the parcel where we haven't done a lot yet, that's just been brush hogged, and then the parcel that the city owns. I did talk to Joe Varquette, and he is trying to clear with the youth soccer program that uses that Milliken field right now. They're seeming like it's not a problem. The one question they had, and that was just yesterday that I talked to him again, was if we were going to be in their parking lot area at all. So we might have to go a little straighter down along that area that is fenced in by the school so that we avoid that parking area altogether on the map that we initially did. I told him that would not be a problem at all. He had to take that information back to the board after I sent him the map to get that pre-approved by them. He just wants to make sure he's totally cleared it with the youth soccer program before the city says yes to it. So he was like, I'm at 95% positive, but he still wants to make sure that's all taken care of before we start to brush hog anything and do anything. I know one other question was potentially like what was gonna happen if we build any other sports complex here on the school property. If you look at the map, any of the maps that we have, we've pretty much kept to the perimeter on everything. So if a football complex, if a track complex ends up going in at some point, I don't think that would affect our course at all because we are perimeter of that whole new property. So we wouldn't be having to change anything or be in the way of anything else. I think that takes care of a lot of my questions. Mr. Sheeman knows a little bit more about how Mr. Beach is going to go about brush hogging to have it prepared for us.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna let him talk.
Yeah, so he's gonna brush hog, super low, and through the whole perimeter, and then we're gonna spray it, and then if need be, we'll bring a forester in. He has one to get the roots and whatnot out, and then we're gonna, plant grass seed, and then basically the maintain is just cutting it with a lawnmower. And I mean, that would be it for the maintenance on it, is just cutting the grass.
Okay, so one of the questions that I had along the way was about leveling it. So I understand the brush hogging, but I have not walked the property. I understand that there were a couple people that did. But will it pose any types of hazard to the runners if it's not leveled?
No, because the forester's gonna, it will take the roots out and level it as it goes.
It will level it as it
Yes.
goes? Okay.
I mean, it's not gonna be parking lot level, but there'll be no big holes to trip in and whatnot.
And it's cross-country, so they're a little more used to I mean, they run through the woods with roots and that. We would have to mark, if there was any big obstacle, we spray painted, we put cones there, so definitely nothing that would make it unsafe for the runners.
Okay. And so if the plan is to plant grass seed, would your idea be in terms of maintenance that we should just be able to use our mowers that we have as a district and be able to mow it on a regular basis?
Correct. Yes.
I think we were looking at it from the aspect that the soccer fields, the present soccer fields were once what this area looks like now, so they just use regular mowers on those at this point.
Right. Okay. Does anybody have any questions about this course?
I do. How wide is it? Is
It'll
it
be 7 foot wide.
7 feet? And that's standard for a cross-country course like this?
Yeah, it's actually maybe a little bit wider
probably
than
wider
what
than
standard
what-
ones
Okay,
are.
so we cut a 7 foot wide through, okay. Huh,
Right.
sounds great.
Mrs. Long, I walked it yesterday, and I did the perimeter, like, pretty much what we did the other day. I added one little one that we didn't see, and then I stayed to the east of the soccer field parking lot there on the east side of that tree lawn.
Okay.
My question is, what type of equipment are they gonna take back there to clean the ground once they brush hog it?
Well, it'll be, the forester is what will, break everything up, and then they can use a York rake. It's a big rake that goes on the back of the tractor, and to pull what brush they need out of the.
That'll just clear the top of the brush off that's been mowed down. That won't pull any of the roots out, the
The
York rake
forester will
won't.
pull the roots out.
Thank you.
And having walked it, anybody that has walked it, how much, in terms of clearing, how much on the sides of that 7 foot wide path is going to be taken down when they clear that, and how much of that will need to be regularly pruned back, or how much of it is in brush and trees that need to be pruned?
Should be none of it once it's done.
Okay.
It's just the trail maintaining the 7 foot wide.
There's really no trees, like people
Okay.
think there's huge trees back there, but it's really just brush.
Okay.
I mean, like the center section, this is going on the perimeter.
Right.
And in the center section, there are, I don't know, trying to visualize, there was one up by 84, some in the back. I mean, there's sort of, I'll call them islands of trees, you know? But like the whole middle section would still need the annual brush hogging.
I guess I was asking because it looks like on the south side that runs along 84, it looked like there were more trees on this overhead map, so I just wasn't sure how much of
I mean,
that.
there's trees on the edge, but not,
Okay.
we're not that deep into that.
Okay.
If we're staying to the perimeter, like we said, that was brush hogged already.
Okay. Okay. Are there any further questions or comments on this course?
Thank you for all your effort you put into this.
You're welcome.
This took a lot of work and planning, and I appreciate your efforts, really.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I will say, I personally am in support of this. I mean, I think the idea that we can put in a cross-country course for our students on property that we're really not doing anything with right now is a great idea. I know that as a board member, of course, I would think about the maintenance going forward and making sure that it doesn't put an undue burden on the school district, but it doesn't sound like it will to me. And then just making sure that when it is cleared, brush hogged, sprayed, roots pulled, raked, like all of that is actually done when it goes in, so that it gets it down to a point where the seed can take and we can just mow. I mean, that would be what I would be looking for.
I think that's what we're looking for. Yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
And I got 3.15 yesterday with no repeats,
That's not bad.
which,
We're about
yeah,
there.
there were no redundancy, no repeats, so that can be scaled back to 3.1.
Right.
Okay, so I think at this point, if there's no further discussion or any questions, I guess what we would need to do is decide if we want to propose a motion to move forward with installing a cross-country course at the high school.
I'll make the motion.
Second.
Okay. And obviously, there's no additional discussion, so we'll do roll call on that.
Mr. Arndt,
Yes?
Ms. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon.
Yes.
And Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
Thank you both.
Thank you.
For presenting.
Yes, thank you both, really.
Okay, we are now at the hearing of the public. Each person that would wish to address the board can step forward to the microphone. They'll have 5 minutes in total to present to the board. You'll be alerted when you have 30 seconds remaining. This time frame is for a total of 30 minutes, and we'd ask that you state your name and address when you approach the microphone.
Jennifer Thompson, 3215 South Myers, Geneva. I'd like to know why I and a few others were told Topic Tuesday was rescheduled for the 20th when the meeting was held on the 18th. I know I was told this as I have a very busy calendar, so I immediately put it in my calendar, repeated it back before I ended the call. I assume I wasn't wanted there because I don't just sit back and say, yes, ma'am. I can only assume that I wasn't wanted there because of my recent issues with Shar, head of busing. So let's get into those issues. Shar is completely rude and disrespectful to our children, yells at them, threatening to kick them off the bus and make them walk over small issues. All of the children, kindergarten to seniors, have had issues with her. When asked her name by kids, she replies, bus driver. I again can only assume that's because she knows she's wrong and doesn't want parent complaints. The way she speaks to our children is borderline abuse, and you, the superintendent, and the Board of Education need to stop this. The next time I hear of her verbally abusing a child, I'll call law enforcement if you're not going to do anything. Now for what I would have said at Topic Tuesday, had I not been lied to. What are our incentives to get drivers here? The pay simply isn't enough. My husband has a CDL and would drive for the school, but not for $500 a week. It isn't worth it when he can use the same CDL to bring home twice that. Are we paying for CDL training? Ashtabula is also having a busing issue. They're offering a stipend to families who drive their kids to and from school. Is this something we can offer to ease the load on our overworked drivers? Communication between busing and families needs to be better. Winter is coming. Our children cannot stand outside in freezing cold for 30 to 45 minutes waiting on a bus. I'd like to personally thank my bus drivers, Cheryl and Tracy. They're awesome, and I appreciate their dedication to getting my kids to and from school safely. As I say every meeting, do better.
Jack Dubsky, 142 Lockwood Street, Geneva, Ohio. I want to start by saying, too, I received a phone call from Mrs. Richmond, too, about Topic Tuesday and was told to show up tomorrow. So are we still having that meeting for, did we split the groups in two? Should I show up tomorrow at 5?
The meeting is not tomorrow.
Okay, why was I told that? I know why I was told that, because you weren't going to get the questions that you wanted to hear from me. I know why I was told not to.
So the meeting was rescheduled for yesterday.
Okay. I would have liked to have known that. I've been watching and following closely since October of 2021. I sat quiet and didn't say much until last week, but while watching, I've witnessed in the leadership of the Board of Education, the superintendent, and the treasurer, they don't care what the taxpayers, their employers, want from our district. They don't care about the wonderful teachers and classified staff that we have and the amazing principals that we have leading the schools. It's obvious by the type of contracts you tried to force feed them back in October. It's obvious you don't care about the professionals you have in place here. And sadly, I learned from personal experience, you do not put the children of this district as your #1 priority. You're willing to let special needs children and gifted children go without services, and we all know you took away our resource center from the kids too. So that speaks volumes. I want to read the definition, and you know, every time I ask questions, whether it be on a one-on-one or whatever, I get excuses. In case you guys don't remember what the definition, it just comes right from Webster. Excuses, attempt to lessen the blame, to seek to defend and justify. Release from a duty or requirement. To me, that sums you guys up, all 7 of you, perfectly. And you always, your famous excuse, Mr. Dubsky, we're having a nationwide shortage. A nationwide shortage. You know why we're having a nationwide shortage? Because of people like you sitting up there. We don't have a lack of teachers. We don't have a lack of people that want to be bus drivers. We have horrible leaderships, not just here, but across the state. Turn on the TV every day, Garfield Heights, same scenario we had to go through here. Tyranny for leadership. Dictators. You work for us. You work for us, the taxpayers. Start doing a better job. Because it's obvious you care about money more than you care about our kids. And there ain't none of yous up there going to convince me otherwise. Dr. Treharn, I beg you for your resignation. You're a horrible leader. Please don't let the catastrophe you've caused here be your legacy. I think down deep you're better than what our district has become since you've arrived. That's all I have to say.
My name is Tim Palm. I live at 4313 North Ridge Road East. My son attends Cork Elementary School. I emailed all of you speaking about this staff and how great they are and the wonderful work that they've done for my child. The speech therapy issue. I had to learn about this on Facebook, on social media. I learned that the services weren't being offered. Why? This issue has been communicated poorly since its inception. It's completely unacceptable. Communicate with us. We are the parents. Long-standing staff members are leaving this district. Geneva school system has been a cornerstone in my entire 40 years of life. My wife and I chose to live in Geneva because of this school system. You're failing us. Look at the staff that you have. Whether it's an aide that goes the extra mile to acclimate a new child to a classroom, to a special needs teacher that researches on her own time, learning how to communicate to an autistic child, to a principal who'll go out and shovel snow in a snowstorm. I don't see any of you doing that. You all, this board, you, the superintendent, you are the captains of this ship. I'm not on this ship, but my child is. You know, I work for a multi-million-dollar transportation organization. I report directly to an executive vice president level manager. This man is at the helm of a massive ship that navigates treacherous waters daily. However, he has the foresight to admit, I am not the smartest man in the room. Please listen to your constituents. Listen to your teachers. Listen to your staff. Let them know that they're being heard. You don't have to action on everything, but you need to listen. Be the lighthouse in the storm. Steer our children back to safer waters. You know, as I walk through this building, I see all these signs that say we soar. Eagles soar. We're not soaring. We're losing altitude. I implore you, be Eagles. Truly soar. Don't just sit up there and talk about it. Thank you.
Brock Pearson, 56 Erie Street. Real quick, I just wanted to go over, I had sent a request regarding what I thought was an appalling report by the Star Beacon about the current salary that was paid to an administrator up there right now. I think you guys know who I'm talking about. At the time, I was told, actually I can read it verbatim for you, I believe it was along the lines of, I don't know, you're going to have to do a public records request for that. And I did. Went and picked it up from Mr. Lillie. And what I found was the most normal, banal contract I've ever read. It read good. You guys did a great job on it. And then the subsequent pieces of it, which I almost actually didn't look into, kind of built a different picture for a lot of the people that live in this community. So I'm going to read that post that I put on Facebook. I know some of you say you don't read that stuff. That's fine. We also do emails, but on March 17th, 2021, the superintendent signs a contract. At that time, $108,441.51. 6 months later, in September, she gets a $2,028.85 raise to $110,000. It's retroactive to the 1st of July 21. 10 months later, on July 20th, 2022, she receives a whopping $829.64 raise. For what? What was going on in July to incentivize that? What in this district did you guys look at on plain paper in any objective decision-making process that said we are going to actualize this increase and that it will bring some yield to the education or just the overall enhancement of the society that we live in, these people pay for? You know, we're talking about fiscal conservatism here. Yeah, I'm a conservative, guys. I come up here screaming like a mad liberal every single time, asking for you to give me one service. You know, you asked me for a tax raise, you got it. Now I pay twice the income tax, and I get 1/4 of the services. I don't even have kids that are in the system. I don't even have kids yet. And you're gonna tell me these people behind me with 2, 4 kids, some of them adults, are managing their time between those children, and you're going to give someone a raise who has done nothing to unify us? This isn't some emotional tablature of which I'm coming to you guys, some grandiose pin you to the wall. I've told you guys this once, I've told you this a million times. You guys can be heroes. You guys can turn around and prove me wrong. And I will admit, I will stand here and I will admit it to you. I will look you in the eyes. I will say, I'm sorry, I didn't take you seriously. I had been asking maybe for too much. Where can we level? But the last time we did that, it didn't end so well. I had one person that wanted to listen to me and one that just kind of wanted to make sure we knew that we weren't really as nice or up to snuff as maybe some of their personal decisions were. So then the Star Beacon runs an article about your salary, right? Which is about $122K at the time. And less than 2 weeks later, what happens? You guys amend it and you remove $7,000 off of it because you don't like the publicity. So as long as we don't know, it's all good. Just like when we weren't paying attention to the school board positions, you guys filled them. Congrats, good on you. But now we're paying attention. And thank you, because we had neglected this for too long. But we're asking you now, don't do things like this. It's shady, it should be illegal, and we're gonna find out. We only have 3 people doing public records requests. I have emails and messages for people 20, 30, 40 that I have been negligent in responding to. And we can do it. We can respond. We can request everything if you guys want, or you could just be up front and honest with us. That's all we're asking for. Thank you.
Okay, we will move on with the approval of the minutes, and we'll need a motion for that.
I'll move.
Second.
Is there any discussion? And roll call, please.
Mr. Arndt,
Yes.
Ms. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
and Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
A motion for the treasurer's financial report.
So moved.
Second.
Any discussion on that? And roll call.
Ms. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz,
Yes.
and Mr. Arndt.
Yes.
A motion to approve the invoices.
Moved.
Second.
And any discussion? Roll call, please.
Mrs. Metzler,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz, Mr. Arndt,
Yes.
and Ms. Fisher.
Yes.
And Mr. Lillie, the informational items?
You see a number of donations reported. The GHS class of 1977 had their 45th reunion and made a number of donations to Rachel's Corner, which is operating through the PBIS fund. Also another donation to the Denny Noble Outstanding Essay Award. And this is almost an annual thing. French Chiropractic and Wellness Center does a new patient services and offers the opportunity to make donations to one of 3 school districts, Geneva, Madison, or Perry. And this is the amount that was donated through those services to Geneva. And then there was also an alto saxophone and some various items donated from Bill Lawrence of Geneva to the Geneva Middle School Band Program.
Thank you. Mrs. Dixon, the legislative report?
Thank you, Mrs. Metzler. Another short report today, everybody. Under consideration in the House are Brenner's bill. It's SB 292, which would outlaw swatting, and a companion piece of legislation under the consideration HB 462, which would make it a third-degree felony for someone to engage in swatting. Now, swatting is sort of the social media slang term for making a false police report. For example, calling the police and saying there's a bomb threat or something at a school, things of that nature. They're calling that swatting, and it's one of the things that are like a TikTok challenge or a social media challenge. So these bills are aimed to put specific legislation in place for specific punishments for these crimes specifically. So Brenner's bill, because of a terrible outcome that happened after one of these false reports, and so then it would be a third-degree felony. If someone is hurt or killed by the false report, the penalties would increase to a first-degree felony, and the person responsible could also be liable for thousands of dollars in restitution for costs associated with the panic caused by swatting, including, the cost incurred by emergency responders while dealing with the hoaxes. So they're trying to clamp down on these false reports. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Fisher, the ATEC report?
Yes, this was a busy month at ATEC. On October 5th, the Find Your Future Career Retreat was held at Ashtabula County Fairgrounds. This was for county freshmen, and about 900 attended. All the schools in the county participated. There were displays set up by various businesses in Ashtabula County to advertise their companies, what they do, and the type of workforce help that they're going to need. There were 16 manufacturing and technical presenters, 10 agricultural presenters, and 17 entrepreneur and team building presenters. This was the first time it was done, and it was a huge success all around. October 13th was the day that ATEC held the Stakeholder and Advisory Committee dinner at the school. About 200 attended. Dinner was served, followed by meetings of the various disciplines in small work sessions. The purpose of these sessions was to update and inform our instructors about new methods and materials being used in the various companies, as well as trends for the future. It does no one any favors if we teach students how to work with steel and then find out that the newest trend is to use aluminum. At the board meeting on Monday, we got the final enrollment numbers for this school year. There are 615 high school students, which is up 53 from last year's 562, and up 97 from the 2020 enrollment of 518. If you add to this the number of students who participate in the various programs taught in schools like carpentry, home improvements, industrial arts, multimedia, computers, and shop, the number of Ashtabula County students impacted by ATEC exceeds 2,500. The adult workforce numbers remained unchanged at 140. Two Geneva students, Haley Borsicki and Michael Gill, were part of a team from the Horticulture, Landscaping, and Parks Management Department that placed 5th and 6th in the state at the Ohio Landscape Olympics last week. Michael also earned a silver medal in tree climbing, and Haley was part of a group that competed in the Ashtabula County Botany Tree ID Challenge. The 18 teams placed 1st and 2nd in that event. And finally, the LPN program, the firefighter program, and the emergency medical program all had 100% passage of their state certifications. And that's it for this month.
Thank you. And the report of the superintendent?
We're going to start with our administrators providing their building reports. And we will start with Mr. Riley.
Good evening, everyone. So in addition to the report that I've given you, I've also included an attachment for the gifted overview. I kind of put this together so that board members and everybody could kind of have an idea of the number of students that we have that have been identified and are receiving services in each of the buildings across the way. As you can see, there's 19 at Austenburg, 20 at Cork, 19 over at GPS, 45 at the middle school, and 74 students at the high school. That's a total of 177 students overall that have been identified and are receiving services in some manner this school year. I also took a look at, I attended a webinar of a couple hours in length that was put on by the Office of Exceptional Children, and I included a couple of slides in there, but some of the things that jumped out at me, and I kind of put it on there, was a kind of our comparison versus what the state is seeing in terms of race and ethnicity. And a lot of that is divided, obviously, understandably, by the demographics of the community and the such. But I kind of thought that was interesting to kind of compare us along with where the state was for the last couple of years. And a couple of slides that I actually included from the presentation itself talks about the 5-year trend of what they're seeing across the state in terms of the students that are identified. Also broke it down by grade bands. From what I can tell, Geneva's been pretty consistent with the number of students that have been identified, plus or minus just a little bit along the way. So I don't necessarily know I think our trend would be pretty close to kind of what was being reflected there. But on the very last page, I know we have, because of the population, right, I suppose, of our community and the demographics and whatnot, and the unfortunate situations, we do have some economically disadvantaged students. As you can see, the state average for economically disadvantaged for the last couple of years has been hovering around 21%. This current school year, with our 177 students, we're sitting at 31% of our students are in the gifted program and are also economically disadvantaged. So just kind of something to kind of keep in mind looking at that as we're moving forward. Back into the report, we are currently offering gifted services across all areas, and I know my colleagues are going to come up in a little bit and talk about what's happening in each one of the buildings there, and I've somewhat listed them there for your reading pleasure moving forward. One of the things I do want to focus on, however, is the required professional development that we are offering. Essentially, I've listed some items there that in terms of professional development, there's reasons why staff members have to go through the professional development, and I've listed those there to making sure they're hitting the 8 competencies and the other information that's required by the state of Ohio. However, they must receive 15 hours worth of gifted professional development each year for over a span of really 4 years to get to the total number of 60 hours Once they receive the 60 hours, then it's just district monitored along the way, and they keep kind of doing it on their own. From a gifted standpoint, we've already tried to address, our goal this year is to have all of our staff members in grades 3 through 12 go through gifted professional development. So that'll allow us to make sure that we are effectively servicing, and be able to account for the servicing of all 177 students. Our 15 hours already started when we had our last professional development day. Denise Hunt worked with the staff on developing WEPs and kind of just a general overview of WEPs. So they're already 2.5 hours well underway, and we're going to use the rest of the professional development days along with some staff meetings here and there to kind of get those 15 hours within the course of the day the best that we can in the course of the teacher's workday, I should say. We did work on WEPs this school year. We tried a new program which is called Same Goal. It is the same program that is used for the special ed department. It actually allows us to enter the information a little bit quicker, I guess, because it's connected through EMIS a little bit. However, we're able to electronically send the written education plans to families. So it kind of eliminates a lot of the paperwork in terms of photocopying and mailing back and forth. So it should save on that end. At this point in time, I've already electronically sent all grades 3 through 8 to the families, and 9 through 12 will be done by the end of the week here. So they will all have been able to receive those. Once they receive them, they have the chance to go ahead and electronically sign them and then send them back to the district. We are having a gifted parent meeting that is scheduled for November 3rd. All families in our community that have gifted children are certainly welcome. It will be held at Cork Elementary School on November 3rd at 6 o'clock. Denise Hunt and myself, Denise is the supervisor of exceptional children over at the Ashtabula County ESC, and is also helping to serve the students at the elementary level this school year. She and I are going to go over various topics. For instance, what does it mean to be identified as gifted? Kind of go over our process a little bit. What can parent support look like at home? What are the available resources for the families, not only locally and regionally, but also from a statewide situation? And then how can the school and the family work together to promote their students moving forward into receiving gifted services and the gifted education that we would like them all to get? So those are some of the key questions we're going to ask. But again, that meeting will be on November 3rd at 6 o'clock, Cork Elementary School. On my end also, we had our district leadership team that was held on October 3rd. The general recap is listed there on the document. However, a couple of trends that we noticed, one of the trends that showed up was we talked quite extensively about writing across all grade levels and curricular subjects. And we also talked about, there are a lot of departments are creating rubrics. So we're going to explore what some of those rubrics look like and making sure that we're kind of assessing our tests the way that we would like to assess them, using those rubrics for some consistency. The Professional Development Day, next PD day for the district, is November 18th. We will have the staff moving through some more gifted education training with Denise Hunt. Eric Kurtz will be going through some technology. Dr. Lori Wilfong, who has already been working with the elementary schools, will come back and work with all the district and staff members on a kind of a writer's workshop and some strategies. And last but not least, grades K through 2 hopefully will be going through some dyslexia training if the state opens up the modules for that and allows us to start going through there. And last but not least, the upcoming dates there are on the conclusion of my report. I do want to take some moment to thank my colleagues, both administratively and also the teaching staff. Writing the WEPs was a challenge. We thought everybody came in at different levels of the writing process, so we had to kind of work our way through that. The Same Goal was a new program we used, so there was a little bit of anxiety about doing all that, but I really commend all the staff members, the teachers, and the administrators for kind of reviewing them, writing them, taking them, and taking them, doing the best they could, and writing them professionally to kind of allow us to get to this point in time. We are in much better shape with the WEPs than we were at this point last year, so we just look forward to expanding that moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Riley.
Next, we'll have Mrs. Porcello.
All right. Good evening. For my student service update, I kind of went with a different part of my job description this time, which is the PBIS at the elementary schools. I had, I don't know, maybe in August, introduced the character focus program that we're going to be doing at the elementary schools. Each month has a different character that the staff is focusing on, working on with the students on. So Mrs. Herder, who is the guidance counselor at the elementary schools, she has been working hard at getting into the classrooms and presenting lessons. This month's focus is respect. She's been reading stories and really just talking with the kids about that. And I want to thank the specials teachers. They've worked hard to create posters for the buildings and other school-wide activities for the elementary schools to do, and Mr. McQuaid for making these posters for the elementary schools. As I walk through the buildings, I spend most of my time in the elementary buildings. I do see a lot of shows that they're taking the character focus seriously. Mentionings of it, discussions about it, there's lots of visuals. GPS in particular this month is doing a door competition for each of the classrooms. Love walking through the halls and seeing those, especially the ones that the kids contribute to, that have to focus on both Halloween and respect. It's pretty cool. So thanks to everybody that is putting an effort to help us along the way with that. Back to special ed for this, the special ed profile portion of it was released in October and indicated that Geneva did score perfect 4s on all 6 indicators that have been released. The next, I believe, 6 indicators are released in December. I'll report back at that point. And then I also wanted to offer a special thanks to the aides that we have in the district. We currently have 34 aides that work between K and 12. And I can't even express how important they are to our day-to-day operation. When they're not here, we know it. When they are here, we also know it. I see them doing amazing things with the kids. I see them doing amazing things with the teachers, and they're always willing to lend a helping hand when needed. So thank you to the aides for what you do.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kelly. Next will be Mr. Weatherholt.
I get to go early. I'm usually last. Don't know if I'm ready for this. You guys got 2 reports for me. The one you're looking at, the sports report, that's actually done by the PBS class. I brought that up last month, that they're going to put something together for sports at once a month for you. So that's that one. But there's a couple things they did not talk about in there. Saturday at Madison High School, the cross-country team will be competing at 9:30. Saturday, the volleyball team will be competing at Madison for sectionals. Cross-countries is districts. Also, football is competing this Friday. It's game 10. We play Chagrin Falls. I believe if we win that game, we can end up with an 8 seed in the state playoffs, which then would mean we may have a game 11 with being at home. That's kind of exciting for us. The last time we had a tournament game was when the state put everybody in the tournament. This time they're up to 16 teams, and we believe we're going to be in the top half, which would have meant even before that change, we would have made the playoffs too. So I wish them the best of luck on Friday. I'm not sure when that game would be, but I'll make sure you guys know. Last month also I talked about one of our own. I want to congratulate Brad Hunt for the opposite course in the World Championship. We actually have his results. He did pretty good representing us. There were 75 racers in his age category. Only 31 finished the course. And Mr. Hunt finished 15th overall in that category, so congratulations to Mr. Hunt. I'd like to thank the academic boosters for helping us celebrate our students with lamps and pins. We celebrated about 225 students. Each student had to have a GPA of 3.5 or higher, so congratulations to them. We had a very special guest speaker, Rebecca Sobolski, who was a graduate from Geneva High School in 2017 and who had graduated from Kent State University. She did a video for us, live Zoom, so we would like to thank her and celebrate her for a moment. If you look at the front cover of mine, and I didn't even notice it when it was put together, and then so I thought, I might as well thank Gina Monahan, because her picture is all over that thing. Everything I looked at, it was Gina. There's Gina, there's Gina. So I wanted to thank Gina because she represents the high school in so many ways, and I think it's ways that sometimes we don't even appreciate it, we don't even recognize it, because she's just in the public. She's making sure that the gingerbreads displays out, the Christmas displays out, and she's doing that out of her art program. So I wanted to thank her for that. Also, the chair that you saw that the class of 1982, who actually used the building a little bit for their class reunion, she actually did that chair for them, so that's on the front cover too. So thank you, Gina, for always doing those things. And then she's on the front cover dressed up as Mrs. Claus, I think with Mr. Hunt out of all people, and just thanking her for always participating and always celebrating our kids. So thank you, Gina, very much for what you do for us. I also wanted one quick note on our gifted. The high school started gifted, well, we were doing gifted for a while, but we actually in 2018 expanded our gifted program that we started including honors classes in English and in math in the 9th and 10th grade. Prior to that, we were only servicing the AP students or the CCP students were getting counted as gifted and serviced. So we expanded then. This year we're going to be, we've expanded even more, where we're starting to get our teachers certified in the general ed population so that we can service all our kids that are marked gifted. I have about 45, but I don't think my number's quite correct. I think it's 74. So we will be expanding the gifted at the high school. And then other thing, I'd like to just thank everybody for everything they do for our kids.
Thank you. Thank you. Mr. Mollahan?
Hello and good evening, everybody. So not to kind of repeat everything Mr. Riley had said in terms of some of the gifted information, but as said earlier, on September 23rd, all of our teachers participated in web training, which was kind of a new process for them. But the one thing that I noticed is that from that training, we went back to our buildings, the way that our teachers worked together to work through this process, to make sure that our students were getting everything that they needed. In terms of the way we tried to schedule our students identified as gifted, to try to have them like cluster scheduled, to have them together in the same classroom, again, so our teachers could better provide like enrichment opportunities for them. So the best part too is the communication that our teachers in our building are having with one another to go and bounce off ideas of how they can work together across different content areas to provide these students as much enrichment options as possible. So it's something that it's a challenge, but it's something that they are, like our teachers in my building always do. They always hit it headstrong and do the absolute best job that they can. That's why I'm lucky to be where I am. ATEC. So our 8th graders went to ATEC on Tuesday, and that was my first time actually touring the school. Mrs. Zappatelli gave me a personal tour. We took all of our 8th grade class out there, and fantastic. Being from the Trumbull County area, I have toured and been around like TCTC multiple times. ATEC, unreal. In my opinion, blows away Trumbull County. So if there's anybody in here from Trumbull County, my apologies, but ATEC is phenomenal. And the best part too was that there were some former students that are now juniors that my first year here in Geneva, they were 8th graders. And they were students that sometimes made their way into my office for not so pleasant conversations all the time. But the best part about what we get to do and what I get to do is when I probably have not seen them really up close since 8th grade. And then I would hear out of the corner, Mr. Mollahan, come here. And it would be so-and-so, or it would be so-and-so. And the best part they said is, I am so glad that I ended up here. Thank you to you, and please tell all the teachers back at school. They mentioned a lot of teachers, by name. Thank you guys for sticking with me. Thank you for pushing me out this direction. And like they love it here. So the ATEC experience was fantastic. 8th graders loved it, and for me personally, first time there was great. In your board packets, I also included many pictures from things that are being done in our teachers' classrooms. One in particular was Mrs. Saban's class where they were working on random acts of kindness, where the goal was to surprise classmates, to tell them something special about each other. And she described it as ways to where students who maybe wouldn't normally communicate on a personal level, gave them an opportunity to give somebody that little extra something special to let them know that they are appreciated. So I included some pictures on that. I also included some pictures with our visit to ATEC. And then a couple little other things. Tomorrow night we are hosting, hopefully the weather holds off, first annual trunk or treat at the middle school. I personally want to thank Mrs. Lamers for all of the work that she had put in. I had had some time away from school because of a death in my family, and the way that she stepped up to kind of help pick up the pieces and help make this tomorrow night, regardless of how it happens and what it turns out to be, it's going to be a success. So Ms. Lamers, thank you, and then obviously all of the parents and all the work going into it. So I'm a little bit nervous because this is a first for me, but we have approximately 40 some cars or close to 50 cars that are signed up. So very excited. And then finally, I wanted to end on a sad note for one of our neighboring schools, Grand Valley, but from it came a positive for us here in Geneva. So on September 28th, the GMS volleyball team played Grand Valley in a match at the middle school. Coach Kayla Koss and Coach Nicole Bobish, found out prior to that match that Grand Valley had a young lady, a young student athlete on the volleyball team who had tragically passed away just a few days leading up to that. Coach Koss had reached out and had asked what they could do, and she had some ideas of what the girls had gotten together that they wanted to do to try to support Grand Valley as a whole. And they found out that the young lady from Grand Valley, her favorite color was purple. So all of the girls wore purple ribbons in their hair as kind of like a sign of support. They also had a card with a monetary donation that the coaches and the girls, all on their own, came together to provide, to give to the family, to try to do something to help with funeral costs, and just to say that your neighbors just north of you are thinking of you. So I received an email a few days after that from Mrs. Roberta Kozad, who is the high school principal at Grand Valley, and she's also the parent of one of the 8th grade volleyball players, and this is what it says. Mark, I meant to send this today, but the day got away from me. Please share this with any and all who need to hear this. Your middle school volleyball team and coaches are a real class act. It was beautiful to see the Geneva team wearing some purple in honor of Alicia, and then the display of sympathy afterward when they all gathered together with our girls was just awesome. Thank you so much for the envelope to help the family that the team put together. It's going to help them in ways those girls probably don't even know. Thank you all for being so wonderful in this very terrible time at Grand Valley. And I wanted to put that in there because we all talk about in education who our kids are, what our kids do, our teachers, our coaches, and sometimes we lose sight of certain things because of the hustle and bustle of just everyday life. And this right here is the example of the kind of students and the kind of coaches and the kind of teachers that we have here in Geneva, and why we are all so very proud of them. So when she said, please share this with any and all who need to hear this, there was nobody better, in my opinion, who should hear this than everybody here on stage and everybody here who's in attendance. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
And lastly, we have Mrs. Brzenko, who will be reporting for each of the 3 elementaries this evening.
Yes, I am from Trumbull County. I was born here in Austinburg, though. I've lived here most of my life. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. Just saying.
And you still live on the border. Let's be honest.
Okay. I will start with Mrs. Doherty, since I am fluffy and she usually wears really nice fancy clothes. So I'm going to start with her, since I'm not allowed to do voices today. She would like me to mention that they have started extended learning, and their focus is again with the 3rd grade students in preparation of the fall testing that's coming up. They're using iReady AR CBA to identify students who would benefit from extended small group instruction. And once the scores from the fall reading tests come in, they will expand a little farther before the spring test. Their PTO also sponsored an annual walkathon that they did on October 13th. Students walked laps around the parking lot that is blocked off for safety. Northwest Ambulance District partnered up with them to teach students how to track their heart rate and check their pulse before the students start their laps. Another check happens when students complete their laps to show the effects of exercise on our heart health. After each lap, students collected a bead to put on a lanyard to track progress. They want to collect as many beads as possible once they have completed their laps, and they will take part in competing an obstacle course. She also, in correspondence to Mr. Riley, talked about her gifted program. I have that information there for you. She has them broken down by grade 3. She has 3 students, grade 4, 12 students, and grade 5, 4 students. We are all working on our PBIS for all the elementaries, as Mrs. Porcello has told you. So each month, each teacher gives a Soaring Eagle Award, and she has listed all of her Soaring Eagles Awards from those teachers for September. Again, as Mrs. Porcello has said, we are working on our monthly character building, and she has some information there about some of the different assets that they are going through and what they will be concentrating on, and she has some really great pictures of her kiddos in there. So thank you, Mrs. Doherty. I will do me next. I'm the comedian here. Okay, so Miss Farina, she also stated on her gifted services that grades 3 through 5, they are meeting with Denise Hunt every Tuesday afternoon. She also talks about them reading The Secret Garden, and the students are making connections to the author's use of language and studying about poetry in math. The students are doing critical thinking activities, such as a geometry lineup with shapes based on geometric clues and terminology. And like Mrs. Doherty and myself, we are all doing extended learning for the 3rd grade students, so she has some information there. She's also talking about student council. It is back this year. It'll also be in my report. She said Ms. Gurley most recently had a meeting on October 4th. Her hope is that members of student council will help with announcements, spirit weeks, food and pet drives, and the Eagle Cart. Student council is helping GPS with the upcoming food drive for Feed Our Vets and Operation Toy Soldier. The students worked on posters, flyers, and will be working on a public service announcement. GPS also participated in a safety drill on October 13th, and it was to mimic a tornado scenario. Staff was provided with printout and video of tornado information to review in regards to real-world scenarios. And in case you don't know, Missy and I lived through that real-world scenario a couple years ago. So we thought this was something important to bring up for all schools, not just because Cork and Osterberg actually lived it. Students sheltered in place, and even selected students provided their students with incident cards or fictitious injuries where the staff or teacher had to determine how to care for the student under that scenario, and they used their Go Buckets. She has a fall party and parade. All 3 of us do actually on October 28th. Hers starts at 2 o'clock, and she has some information about that. As Mrs. Porcello also mentioned, they have a door decorating contest. Mrs. Porcello failed to tell you that her office is decorated as a coffice. So you go by, there's these big Google eyes everywhere. So it is fun. I've been in GPS for a couple of different things, and I have seen all those doors, and they are really doing a spectacular job over there. So very proud of their teachers for participating in that. Okay, a little more. I gotta get a little more. Okay, now me. All right. As you can see, I have an October event calendar. So in case you would like to stop in at Osterberg of any of these days, some of these might be something that interests you that you can come and hit. We had the Osterberg Fire Department visit on the 17th. The 24th through the 28th, we have Red Ribbon Week. And on the last day will also be our fall party and parade. The 25th and 26th, we have the 3rd grade fall state test, so don't stop on that day because you're not gonna be able to see anybody. The 27th is Trunk or Treat. This is something that we do annually, so I'm really glad to hear Mr. Markajon and Ms. Lamers are working on their first Trunk or Treat. That'll be fun. Eagles of Excellence, we also have our monthly students are chosen to represent at Osterberg. I have some parents here that actually have signs that probably are in their yard or they took them down already, but the students do get a sign, a yard sign, and they get to put it in their yard. And I just gave you a list of September's on the next page. Gifted news, our teachers have written the WEPs for students and were identified as gifted. Denise Hunt comes to our building on a Wednesday afternoon, and she spends some time with those students as well to do some enrichment with them. One of the administrators already talked about the modules that they did. I also have been doing the modules with the teachers. I think it's very important that if we're asking our teachers to do something, that I should be able to do it as well and participate with them, go through the trenches with them, so I am doing that as well. I'm not saying I like it, but I'm saying I'm doing it. Student Council, Mrs. Bucci has selected 10 students within grades 4 or 5 to represent our building this year. I also wrote an article in the Gazette, for the Gazette, and it is also in your packet as well, so that you can see the names and all the great things that we have planned. My building is still doing the positive postcards, and that is where teachers have to send home a certain amount of postcards each month to the families to tell them some positives about their child and that they see in the classroom. So many times I'm calling or they're calling, hey, Johnny's doing this, or so sorry if your name's Johnny and you're here, but you're doing this or doing this. We need something positive to go out, and this is something I've started since I've been here, so we get a lot of great feedback on that. So we're still doing that again this year. And I'd also like to give some recognition to Puckrin Farms. He actually came out and gave each student an Indian corn. So I was actually at an admin meeting, I come back and my whole stage is filled with Indian corn. And I'm like, what are we doing with that? So they told me that Mr. Puckrin was kind enough to drop it off. Usually he gives us pumpkins, but this year we got Indian corn. And you should have seen the kids' faces when they came up and saw the different types of Indian corn in the different colors. It was just quite amazing, and they really picked out some special ones for their own family. And I'd also like to thank the Austinburg Fire Department for visiting last week and talking about fire safety with us, because we think it's really important. And on your last page in your packet was on the article about character education that we did practice last week with the sample. They didn't do voices.
Thank you.
Said no voices.
That's too bad.
I too would like to thank all of the administrators and teachers for their work with gifted education and writing WEPs and WAPs. I'm very happy that we will be able to service all of our students this year who have been identified as gifted. So we've definitely come a long way, and that will continue to evolve. So thank you.
And I just want to quickly say, I know it takes a lot of work for all of the principals to put together these reports, and these were really great reports this month. So thank you to all of you for putting this together. Thank you to your staff for just doing their jobs outstandingly with our students. These were just really great reports, so thank you very much to all of the staff. The superintendent recommends approval of the attached service agreement between Geneva Area City Schools and MLF Speech Therapy Services.
Moved.
Second.
And any discussion on this?
This is to provide services to our students while our SLP is on leave. I know that Mrs. Porcello has been looking for a replacement for months, and I'm happy to say that she has secured some people to put those services in place.
Roll call?
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
Mr. Arndt,
Yes.
Ms. Fisher,
Yes.
and Mrs. Metzler.
Yes. The superintendent recommends the following new revised replacement policies for board adoption.
Move.
Second.
And discussion? And roll call.
Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
Mr. Arndt.
Yes.
Ms. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler,
Yes.
and Mrs. Milliken Dixon.
Yes.
The superintendent recommends that the board recognize indoor track and field for the 22-23 season.
Move.
Second.
And discussion?
There's nothing new on this. This is the same form that we sign annually.
And roll call.
Mr. Arndt.
Yes.
Ms. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
and Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
The superintendent recommends the board approve the following student as having met the requirements for early graduation.
Move.
Second.
And discussion.
Is Taylor here? I thought he might come. No? Okay. Just curious.
Roll call?
Ms. Fisher,
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz,
Yes.
and Mr. Arndt.
Yes.
The treasurer recommends the following funds be appropriated according to the adopted budget.
Moved.
Second.
And discussion? And roll call.
Mrs. Metzler,
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
Mr. Arndt.
Yes.
And Ms. Fisher.
Yes.
The superintendent recommends the following personnel actions for the 22-23 contract year.
Moved.
Second.
Any discussion? And roll call.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon,
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
Mr. Arndt.
Yes.
Ms. Fisher.
Yes.
And Mrs. Metzler.
Yes. The superintendent recommends the following volunteer coaches for the 22-23 school year.
Moved.
Second.
And discussion? And roll call.
Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
Mr. Arndt.
Yes.
Ms. Fisher.
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler.
Yes.
And Mrs. Milliken Dixon.
Yes.
The superintendent recommends that the board approve the enclosed resolution authorizing contracts with Dennis R. Spalding, Inc.
Moved.
Second.
And discussion. I have a question. The map that we received,
I'm sorry, Mrs. Metzler, can you speak up?
the question that I have is the map that we received that shows the location of the cameras. Was this come to a decision with the input of all of the principals of the schools?
This was on recommendation of Mr. Brigard, who I believe has spoken with all of them. I know that he walked the buildings with the companies that came out who wanted to put their proposals in, and this is to put, this is really to wipe out all of our current cameras and replace them with new and upgraded cameras and software. They will cover a lot more areas than what the current ones do. And from speaking with Mr. Brigard, the ones that these are replacing, some of which cannot be used anymore, they're currently broken, and therefore there's sort of dead spots. Those, if he can sell them, he'll put them up for auction. And the others, if we find when we do put these up that there are still any areas that might need additional coverage, then the plan would be to put those in those areas as well.
Okay, so are these all, as a result of all of that, are these all replacements for what are currently there, or were there some new added to this?
It's definitely covering more area. I mean, it's hard to say, like, if we had X amount, we purchased X amount, because these are better cameras, and so they cover a lot more area. So maybe if a current camera only captures, you know, this angle, maybe one of these captures this angle.
Okay.
And this is for the buses as well, not just the building cameras.
That was my question. Okay.
Any other discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Mr. Arndt.
Yes.
Ms. Fisher.
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler.
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon.
Yes.
And Mrs. Ortiz.
Yes.
Okay, we've arrived at the second hearing of the public. The same rules apply. It's 5 minutes to speak. You'll be alerted at 30 seconds remaining, and it'll be a total of 30 minutes should we need it. Okay, and we'll move on to the other.
So I have a variety of topics that I would like to report on. The first being school safety. So this is for the first time ever. October is being recognized as the first annual school safety month in Ohio. The Ohio School Safety Center has made this year's theme, "Know School Safety, Know Your Role. It's everyone's responsibility." So in Geneva, we certainly are always thinking about school safety, hence the upgrades with all of the cameras. As you heard some of the principals mention, last week we did conduct tornado drills at both GPS and the high school with police, fire, and NAD present. I can speak for the high school because I was at that building and Mr. Riley was at GPS during those drills. They did a wonderful job. It was interesting to see some of the kids that were handed cards as if they had fake injuries and how the teachers responded to those, or there was a student or two who purposefully they had planted as missing, quote unquote, they were not really missing, to see how our staff would handle it. And in speaking with Mrs. Dragon, there was kind of a funny story there, but she did a wonderful job. She had called the office to report the student missing, and she was told by the office, if this was a tornado, you wouldn't have a phone, and they hung up on her to see how she would really handle it. And she did a wonderful job, so it was very neat to witness that drill take place at the high school. Early next month, we'll be doing an active shooter drill at the middle school. We have been meeting and planning and have another meeting coming up to plan for that. We always frequently meet as a safety committee along with our safety forces. Last week, I also was able to attend the Ashtabula County, Ohio Safety Council meeting, and the presenter spoke about active shooters. And of course, most importantly, just to remember, as we always say, if you see something, say something, is we all have to work together to keep our schools safe. On October 7th, we held a flu and vaccine clinic for staff provided by the Ashtabula County Health Department. A big thanks to Cindy Drought for planning this. And again, on October 17th, we held another one thanks to Scott Gerdes from Gerdes Pharmacy. Just to follow back around on the transportation survey that was sent out, and I mentioned it a little bit, I think, at the last meeting. All of that information was given to our bus supervisor, and she and I recently met. And unfortunately, it was determined that the results of that aren't necessarily going to be able to decrease any routes. So from the morning or AM responses that were given, the students who were able to have parents transport them were sort of very spaced out. So it was described as, maybe there would be 2 less students on this bus, 3 on this bus, but there wasn't enough collectively to be able to decrease any routes for the morning runs. And she discovered from the PM runs that the vast majority who said that they could transport their child currently weren't utilizing the bus. But we certainly thank those who took the time to complete that survey for us, and will continue to hopefully work to attract and obtain drivers. Hopefully you saw our new community newsletter that went out called Eagles Landing. Moving forward, this will go out the first week of the month and will be posted on our website and social media. And additionally, it will be emailed to parents of those who have, or we have rather, their email addresses. As Mr. Weatherholt noted, the Lamps and Pins breakfast, yes, we had exactly 229 students receive that, which is up approximately 60 from last year. So that was wonderful to see. We had another portrait of a graduate meeting, and we have finalized the characteristics and or skills we believe a student who graduates from Geneva should possess. And those are: communicates effectively, thinks critically, displays integrity, demonstrates leadership, exhibits resiliency, and pursues knowledge. Additionally, we gave feedback on the visual representations, and a huge thanks goes to Mr. McCoy, who has been instrumental in getting those to us and kind of helping our vision come to paper. We will be looking again at those at our next meeting, and then once we have those finalized, we'll be sending those out in a survey to provide everyone the opportunity to vote on which one they like best, and that will be the one that we will utilize moving forward. We will again be participating in the Stuff the Bus Operation Toy Soldier battle. So ironically, the same 3 schools are participating this year: Buckeye, Conneaut, and your very own winners from last year, Geneva. Therefore, we will be collecting food and toys for our Feed Our Vets and Operation Toy Soldier. Just please keep in mind, everything collected does stay in Ashtabula County. Each school will be collecting items from November 14th to December 1st, and then on December 3rd, we will again be at the Ashtabula Walmart from 10 to 2 for anyone who wants to make any last-minute donations. And lastly, we have our first round of Soaring Eagles for the year. So at Austinburg, 3rd grader Lindy Cameron was chosen by Mrs. Nappy, and she shared that Lindy is a very kind, task-oriented little lady, She enters our room daily with a smile on her face, ready to work. She's always positive and supportive, offering comments to her classmates that are kind and reassuring if things are difficult. She is polite and often the first to use a peace symbol in areas of need. At Cork, Mrs. Nelson chose 5th grader Carson Matthews and shared that Carson is a positive role model to all who are around him. He follows directions and shows others how to do the same by leading by example. He is kind and considerate, always brings in extra snacks to share, and would give out his last pencil for someone else to use. She shared that he is thoughtful and remembered a classmate's birthday and brought in a gift. Carson works with persistence without complaint, and his work reflects pride. He is a soaring eagle because he is hardworking, trustworthy, empathetic, thoughtful, and kind. At GPS, Mrs. Brigard chose 4th grader Travis Greenaway and wrote that Travis is always the first person to help one of his classmates in class. If they cannot read a word or need help understanding something, they know they can ask him and he will help them the best that he can. At the middle school, Mrs. Graber Blake chose 8th grader Jake Miranda Soto and wrote that Jake is always striving to be a model student both in and outside the classroom. He cares about school and his grades and works hard to stay on top of those. She also noted that he has shown that he isn't afraid to ask for help and self-advocates when he needs it and always has an open line of communication with her. He is polite, genuine, and a hard worker, which are all qualities of a good leader. He also cares about his peers and is willing to help out where he can to help other students with classwork. He is extremely deserving of this award, and we are proud to have him as a student. And last but not least, at the high school, Mr. Cripple, our new math teacher, was chosen by Mr. Hunt. And Mr. Hunt noted that Mr. Cripple is an incredible math teacher. He demonstrates daily that he is truly concerned with the needs of his students. During class, he provides students with challenging activities from bell to bell. Absolutely no time is wasted. He provides students with ample time to thoroughly explore what they are learning to truly understand new concepts. He is sensitive to students' learning preferences and makes each student feel comfortable in his classroom, which in turn fosters solid growth. When students say that they can't do or can't understand something, he always can be heard by adding the word "yet" to the end of that declaration. If one of his students happens to be placed in the Positive Behavior Intervention Center for the day, you can bet that during his planning period, Mr. Cripple will be getting that student out of PBIC and walking with the student through the halls, having meaningful conversations. Most importantly, he works daily to develop grit in his students. There are many days when students may not feel like doing assignments. He is able to get his students over that feeling and rise to the challenge of learning every day. And he is not loud about it. He is not raising his voice for attention. He knows how to quietly pull students in, make them feel comfortable, and get them to accept the daily challenge of learning. We are very lucky to have him as a math teacher. He is a true soaring eagle.
Good, thank you. Does anyone else have anything for other this evening?
I do. I had the opportunity to have some visits this month with some of our staff. Thank you, Ms. Porcello, for speaking with me about our student services and all of that. And I am in awe of the work that you are doing. And I so appreciate the speech therapy agreement and all of that hard work. And so thank you, thank you, thank you. The other thing I did was I went to the bus garage and met with some of the bus drivers. I think they were all there, actually. And we had a great conversation about their challenges and about the challenges they hear from bus drivers across the county, across the state, about the shortages and the difficulties of that. And I wanted to share one thing that I really felt that they told me was that we have enough bus drivers to handle the routes that we have. But if anyone has a migraine or a toothache or an emergency or something and has to miss their route for the day, all that really does is then put the burden on the rest of the drivers, because all we have is the number we exactly need. And so they felt that as colleagues, and I heard them, and I felt that with them. And so I want to thank everyone, all of them, and Shar for speaking with me and letting me visit that day. That's all. Thanks.
Anyone else?
Madam President, I have one question.
Yep.
To the student services update, For us to get a perfect score of 4 on all 6 indicators, what is that the result of? What did it take to achieve that?
You asking me? Oh. My response certainly would be the hard work and efforts of all of our staff and administrators. Mm-hmm.
That's impressive. Thank you. And thank everybody, please.
Anyone else? Okay, I have just one quick other. I had an opportunity to visit the treasurer's office at the end of September. It was an office that I hadn't previously visited in the couple of years that I've been on the board, and I was able to spend an hour each with the 3 ladies that work in the treasurer's office, Lori, Cheryl, and Alicia. And I think, you know, maybe people know what, or they think they know what these ladies do in this office. I mean, it maybe seems pretty simple. Well, they process payroll and they pay the bills, and I can say that I may have thought that before I met with them, and certainly we all know there's more to it than that, but what these ladies do every day is really quite phenomenal. They are busy from start to finish every day. They have so much responsibility and so much attention to detail that they have to perform daily. In speaking with Lori, who does payroll and insurance, who works with Cheryl, who does payroll, I mean, their days are very full, and their processing of payroll and insurance becomes very time-consuming due to the software that they have to use and the balancing and making sure that their numbers come out exactly even and to a T. And that's just part of their job. She ran the list of other things that she does and some of her priorities, and it was pretty impressive. And I asked about you know, how they've changed things over the years, and she talked about how they've streamlined their use of spreadsheets versus manual calculations, and they're paying things online when they can instead of having to cut checks. So they are readily looking for ways to streamline the work that they do. Cheryl talked to me a bit about how a lot of what she does is really related to HR. When a new employee comes into the district, we do not have an HR department. So Cheryl is the main person that enters these employees into the system, makes sure that they get set up for insurance and everything that goes along with being a district employee. She talked to me about the busier months being September and June, and her cheat sheet that she uses to make sure that she's doing everything in a timely fashion all throughout the school year. And then with Alicia, she's considered the bookkeeper and accounts payable, but there's so much more than that. You know, she does purchase order processing. You know, that is one of her priorities, making sure the bills are paid and processing purchase orders. But in addition to that, she's got anything that has to do with money that's not payroll is what happens to go to Alicia. And while I was there, she, you know, fields phone calls from people in the district that have questions about any of those processes, and she has a number of tasks. And I will just say that I was very impressed in speaking with these ladies. They do a lot of work. They are very conscientious workers, and I think Mr. Lillie has an excellent office and ladies in it. And I will say that there is longevity there in all of these positions, and it'll be a sad day when they are ready to retire, and they will be hard to replace. But I was very fortunate to be allowed to visit, so thank you, Mr. Lillie, and thank you to your staff. I appreciated the time. Anything else? Okay. I recommend the board hold an executive session for the purpose of considering the appointment, employment, discipline, promotion, demotion, or compensation of a public employee or official.
So moved.
Second.
And discussion and roll call.
Ms. Fisher?
Yes.
Mrs. Metzler?
Yes.
Mrs. Milliken Dixon?
Yes.
Mrs. Ortiz?
Yes.
And Mr. Arndt?
Yes.
Okay, we will not be taking further action after our executive session. Thank you all for attending tonight, and be safe in your travels. It's raining pretty hard out there.
Are we staying here? I have to go back. Are we staying here?
Oh, we are? We're not.
I don't care.
Oh, okay. We can go wherever you want.